What's up, fellow disasters? Welcome back to Alive-ish, the podcast for the people who are absolutely not thriving but are trying to be okay. So let's talk about a very important topic today. My therapist would be proud of me if I had one. Basically, the title of my autobiography at this point. You know that moment when you do something like emotionally intelligent and you're like, I am so emotionally mature and evolved. And then you realize that you're basically cosplaying as a functioning adult. Yeah, let's unpack that today. So buckle up, it's gonna be one hell of a roller coaster. Sometimes you catch yourself doing something emotionally intelligent, and for 1 second you ask yourself, wow, am I okay? And then you realize you're not. But at least you're self aware about it, so points for that. And apparently, the grown ups call that growth. So today's episode is gonna be about that strange type of emotional development where we all fake it until it becomes real. No therapist in sight, just vibes, spirals, and maybe a couple of playlists. So let's see. First thing first, emotional growth is absolutely unhinged. Like genuinely, what is it? One day you're having a full breakdown because of the most minor inconvenience in life, and the next day you're having some profound epiphany about the different types of attachment styles while watching TikToks. Like, how does it make sense? You know, there is no trigger, there is no cause, there is nothing. There's no movie montage, there's no background music. Like, you're just in the middle of doing the most random thing. You just ask yourself, why do I feel this way? It feels weird. It's like catching yourself in the act of not being toxic and realizing that you didn't overreact this time, or just sitting with your feelings instead of running away from them and wondering, when did you become this? Emotional growth isn't dramatic, it's subtle. It's not heating your phone across the room whenever you get pissed off. It's telling yourself, okay, I can deal with this tomorrow. It's recognizing a pattern and choosing not to repeat this pattern anymore. That's character development. It's off screen, it's quiet, it's usually done in the background, but it is the most real. The thing about emotional growth is it does not give main character energy at all. It's more of like background character development, like I just said. You don't wake up one day with your life together and your trauma healed. It's more of like slowly starting to recognize when you're being delulu and when you're about to make a decision that your future self will absolutely abuse you at. It's catching yourself before you spiral into the phase where everybody hates me and I'm gonna die alone. Headspace all over again. Over literally nothing. Or finally understanding when you're upset about something you're not actually upset about at it, but you're upset about feeling overwhelmed and whatever's in front of you is just taking the heat. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. It's just the fact that, are we all just out here being our own unpaid therapists? Because that's essentially what's happening here. We are doing emotional labor for ourselves and sometimes for our friends. That would easily cost like $200 an hour if you were paying someone else to do it. I've learned more about myself and my friend from 3 a.m. discussion sessions and analyzing my own behavior patterns than some people learn in actual years of therapy. Shout out to my notes for being the real therapist. Like, she has seen things that would make a licensed professional want to have her own therapy session. But again, what we're doing here is really budget therapy, self-diagnosing, talking to ourselves in the mirror, like, we're in a season finale. But what's the difference here? Self-reflection is just doing the most basic things, like, journaling aggressively when you feel the urge to do it, or making, playlists based on your quote-unquote mood, or having like very weird moments of clarity when you're doing the most randomest of tasks. But in actual therapy, it requires structure, it requires tools, it requires someone gently calling you out while you nod and pretend you're fine and pretend you're not getting butt hurt by every time she or he calls you out. Self-reflection gives you awareness, but therapy gives you accountability. Both of them are valid, but again, most of us are doing the best we can with what we've got. You're not a licensed professional, you're just someone who is actively trying not to ruin your own life. And honestly, the It's the effort that counts. Self reflection hits different when you're the one doing all the work. It's like being your own personal investigator, except instead of solving crimes, you're solving why you cry or why you self sabotage every time something good is about to happen. And the thing is, actual therapists are better at calling you out on your bullshit. Like, I can sit here and analyze why I'm being dramatic or why I'm feeling vulnerable, but a real therapist would sit you down and be like, you just said this 5 minutes ago, like, what are you trying to do? No, they're not emotionally invested in your delusions like the way you are. But therapy is expensive and not everybody has access to it. Some of us are out here with our mental health apps, which is basically our notes app, and like our one or two best friends trying to figure it out. And again, the fact that you're trying to understand yourself is showing a lot of growth. Now let's talk about the little wins in life, Can we acknowledge how the tiniest emotional victories feel like you just won the Nobel Peace Prize? Because you're out here literally celebrating the most basic human behaviors like there are some freaking Olympic achievements. Like what? Not ghosting somebody when you're being overwhelmed? That's a big thing. Responding to somebody saying, let's deal with this later, I'm a bit busy right now, instead of randomly just disappearing. That's groundbreaking. Acknowledging and saying it out loud that you are not okay. These are not small, these are evidence that you're shifting slowly, quietly, but definitely. It's not the big healing moments that matter the most, it's the tiny ones that nobody sees. The ones that do not, get posted on your social media. The ones that tend to look boring, but they are the rewards of internal revolutions, you know? And I think the least you can do is celebrate them. Even if it's just you in your room clapping for yourself, acknowledge them, acknowledge the journey that you went through, acknowledge how happy you are when you go through these small victories in life. Because they are proof that you're not the same person who used to avoid conflict until it literally exploded in your face. Or you're not the same person that would rather ghost somebody than have one tiny uncomfortable conversation. Every time you choose to be direct instead of passive aggressive, every time you take a breather to sit down with your feelings and acknowledge them instead of immediately either trying to fix them or distract yourself, that's character development. Every time you set boundaries with your friends, nothing dramatic, just saying, oh, I can't hang out tonight, you just want to sit down at home. You deserve a fucking parade. Or when you finally have a conversation that you've been avoiding because it was stressing you out for weeks, and it turns out to be manageable. Like, not fun, but at least you survived it. You know? And you're walking away thinking, oh, I'm a communication genius. And I should start a podcast about conflict resolution, which is basically what I'm doing in retrospect. Yeah, character development. And I think now we do have to talk about Instagram therapy culture, because it is really driving me crazy. Because everybody is suddenly a mental health expert because they reposted a post about trauma responses. The amount of normalize this, normalize that I see on a daily basis could probably normalize the entire concept of being a human. Like, some of these posts are genuinely helpful, you know? But there is this performative healing culture happening where everybody is documenting their therapy breakthroughs like it's an unboxing video. Get ready to like process my abandonment issues or trauma dump, but make it aesthetic, like what's going on. People are posting this perfect morning routines, meditations, journal spreads about emotions, and I'm just here wondering, like, am I supposed to be documenting my mental health journey? Like, I thought the whole point of mental health journey is that it's supposed to be private, because this is your struggle. It's internal, it's invisible, it's you not spiraling when you totally could have. And it is you breaking this loop quietly, without with the need of telling anybody. Posting an Instagram story does not make you more evolved than someone who just cried for like 30 minutes right now and decided to move on with their life. Like, there is a fine line between aesthetics and healing. You don't have to document your mental health journey and growth. in order to make it valid. Like, healing is messy because it's a cycle. You heal for a bit, and then eventually you see something that triggers you, so that just takes you back weeks of healing. It's constantly repeating. It's not linear, and it's definitely not curated. So yeah, I don't think you don't have to document your growth to make it valid. And yeah, sometimes you will still act and healed, but again, that's part of the growth. That is part of life. Real progress is having the same revelation about yourself 17 billion times before you actually decide you're going to change the behavior. It's about learning the same lesson over and over again because apparently your brain needs the repetition to actually retain information. Emotional growth is not about giving content. It's boring, it's ugly. It's about recognizing when you're about to spiral and choosing to call somebody to talk about it instead of cutting yourself off from the world. Instead of, and it's catching yourself mid destructive behavior and just, telling yourself, okay, you know what? I'm not doing this today. And speaking of repetition, emotional growth is absolutely not linear. Whoever said it was needs to be freaking shot. It's not like a video game, where you level up and suddenly you unlock new skills. No, it's more of like learning to drive. Sure, you will crash a few times, but then that is part of the journey. Sometimes you feel like you gotta figure it out, and other days you can't park to save your life. There is this period where people think they're becoming emotionally intelligent, you're handling your triggers better, you're communicating, and at the slightest inconvenience, next thing you know, you don't even know how to function amongst other people. And then all it takes is not even a bad week, a bad month. No, it just takes 1 second, and you will fall back into every toxic pattern that you think you've outgrown. You will feel disappointed in yourself. You will tell yourself, I thought we were past this phase, but why are you acting like you've learned nothing? But that's not how the brain works. Healing is not a destination where you arrive and you're magically fixed forever. It's more of like emotional maintenance. You will have bad days, you will have good days, and you're going to react in ways that surprise you. You're going to discover new layers of yourself that will need some work. And that's not failure, that is just you being human in a world that is literally designed to absolutely fuck up your mental health. You will revisit the same lessons over and over again, not because you're broken, but this is just because the only way your brain is trying to protect you. It's the only way the brain knows how to. Progress is not permanent, but then again, neither is pain. So yeah, maybe you don't have a therapist. Maybe you can't afford one. Maybe you're, waiting, or you're on a wait list to go see a therapist. Or maybe you're just not ready. But every time you catch a feeling before it becomes a reaction, every time you pause before, you start imploding, or every time you're able to acknowledge your emotions without judging yourself for it, that's growth. That is effort, and that is you healing. You know, our imagined therapists who would, you don't need to have actual validation from a licensed professional to appreciate your own growth. Maybe you can gas yourself up a little here and there. Maybe recognizing that you are trying, that you're paying attention to yourself, you're slowly becoming more self aware. That's enough for right now. Your hypothetical therapist would probably be like, the fact that you're even thinking about this is already, sign that you are working on yourself. The work of becoming more present, more authentic, more willing to feel your feelings instead of pushing them down and projecting them onto everybody else. Like this is progress. This is how things are going to be. This is how the recovery is. And even if you had a therapist, what will they say? All they're saying is, oh yeah, this is you, caring about yourself. This is you showing progress. At the end of the day, it's the same thing. Even if it's messy, even if it's slow, and even if you don't feel like doing it, you still are doing it. The work of being alive in a way that's just actually sustainable instead of just surviving on anxiety and caffeine. So, whether you have a therapist or not, or whether you're just out here being your own emotional support system while being the emotional support system for 20 other people, remember that progress is progress, even if it's messy. Whether you're journaling in secret, spiraling in silence, or healing out loud, just know that you're not alone in this, journey. Progress doesn't feel like progress, but it counts, even when it's just alive-ish. Every moment of self-awareness, every time you choose growth over comfort, every small win that makes you feel like you deserve a medal, it all counts. You're doing much better than you think you are, even when it doesn't feel like it. So, thank you for hanging out with me today. If this hits different, or if you feel better after after listening to this, please do leave a comment. I would love to hear from you chaotic human beings. Until next time, thanks for listening and catch you next episode. Same voice, new spiral.